I2U2. मैं दो, मेरा दो, तुम दो. ओके, मैं दो कौन है पता है, मेरा दो कौन है, अदानी और अंबानी. ओके, सो मैं दो कौन पता है ना. ओके, तो वो तो ठीक है, बोलूंगा नहीं नाम. ओके, सो ये I2U2 नहीं है, ये कुछ दूसरा I2U2 है. ओके, so this is about a quad which is evolving. First virtual summit was held. Which are the countries? Okay, India, USA, Israel and UAE. Saudi Arabia नहीं है इसमें. ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं, माफ कर दिया तुमको. Right, so no Saudi Arabia, but it is UAE. Okay, so this is the first virtual summit of these four leaders, a new quadrilateral grouping on 14th of July, a couple of days before 2022, first virtual summit was held. Okay, and all the leaders talked about common areas of mutual interest. And when we join like this, definitely we will not talk about any strategic significance and all. We will talk about trade, okay, then investment, then we talk about maybe economic partnership, etc. We talked. In fact, first time this I2U2's foreign ministers, they met in October 2021. I2U2 foreign ministers met in October 2021. This is also, some people are referring this I2U2 as the West Asian Quad. The only common factor in both the quads is India, so that is a welcome sign for us. So this was earlier talked about as International Forum for Economic Cooperation. Initially this name given was that International Forum for Economic Cooperation. Initially in 2021, this was named as International Forum for Economic Cooperation. Okay. So, see, please remember, that's what I said, any such quadrilateral grouping or any such grouping, they will never tell the real intention. The real intention will always be in the background, and we will only talk about trade, commerce, etc. as if that is the main. That is not the main objective. उसके लिए इसकी जरूरत नहीं है. Okay. So this I2U2 also identified certain areas like investment or to join investments in water. 6 areas were identified: energy, transportation, space, health, and food security. So these are 6 areas identified for investment in water, energy, transportation, space, health, food security. Okay, and cooperation, so investment in these areas, these are for investment. Then cooperation in other areas like technology, because Israel is a major technology provider, US is a technology provider, and UAE, even though they are an oil-based economy right now, they would like to convert their economy into a technology-based economy. They want to convert into a technology based economy. Convert into a technology based economy. So, technology, because Israeli technology even now, India's main concern and interest in Israel is their technology in especially dry farm agriculture, water management, okay, even cultivation in deserts, all they have huge expertise, even other surveillance, defense equipments, technology is a big factor for them. US is anyway the headquarters of technology, and India and UAE are interested in technology. So, one is technology, another area is food security. I already mentioned about food security. See, this is in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war also. Russia-Ukraine war and the disruptions in the food supply, and there is a food inflation going on in the world. Right now, there is food inflation and disruption in the food supply. And again, country we have a big problem of malnourishment. We have already seen India suffering from malnourishment. India suffering from malnourishment also. So, in this there is a discussion about setting up a food park, setting up a food parks in India, agricultural parks and food park, basically agricultural park, where the leaders were talking about an investment to the tune of around $2 billion, agriculture parks to be set up in India. I mean, India as the right location. So, talking about a $2 billion project also. Then of course, other than this, unsaid security and defense cooperation, security and defense. Another area definitely transportation, trade and transportation. So, all these areas have been elaborately discussed. Okay. So, first time we are talking about a new group. First summit, a virtual summit was held, I2U2. Now, coming to a small analysis. First of all, a new trend in the world right now, what is called as minilateralism. This is yet another venture in the concept of minilateralism, multilateralism, bilateralism, okay, trilateralism. So, now we are talking about minilateralism, okay, where more than one country, but not too many countries. So, 3-4 of them. So, this kind of a, so this is a new trend. Minilateralism is the new trend in international relations. Minilateralism is a new trend in international relations, and this I2U2 is another example of this newfound enthusiasm in minilateralism. Okay, is a new trend, or rather, it's a part of this new trend, and a good example of minilateralism right now is this I2U2. Second point is, in 2020, Americans initiated something called the Abraham Accords. Okay, Abraham Accords. What is Abraham Accords? I mean, it is not only that. See, the Abrahamic religion. Okay, Abrahamic religion is the Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Okay, so now this idea of coming, the what you call, coming together of all the three, okay, or compromising, because they are, fighting against each other. So now, under the initiative of the US, they managed to have, diplomatic relations between Israel and UAE in the beginning, and UAE, and later on with Bahrain also. So when all the three religions, or rather, well, three countries with three different religions as their, mainstay, when they came together and signed this agreement of recognizing Israel by UAE, this was termed in general as the Abraham Accords. Okay, so this with the diplomacy by US, which is known as the, I'll come to the Abraham Accords. So this is, this I2U2 is a further push to this Abraham Accords. So US has great interest in this region, or rather US has great interest in I2U2, the US interest. So it wants to expand its footprint in West Asia. Rather, it wants to restore the old partnerships, which they lost during Trump's time, okay, which suffered, wants to restore old partnerships and alliances, which suffered during Trump because of his maverick policies. Also, they want to, play a larger role in solving the Israel-Palestine conflict also. That is why next week President Joe Biden is visiting Saudi Arabia, Israel, then Palestine, and he is meeting 9 Arab leaders, okay, and a big summit is planning there. So they are also, I think the Joe Biden will be once again reinitiating the process of that peace process, or rather to find a solution to Israel-Palestine conflict also. So basically, they want to expand their footprint, and especially in a time when they have withdrawn. The context is US has withdrawn from Afghanistan, and they have already burned their fingers in Iraq. So, and in the process, this ISIS and all emerged in Iraq and Syria, and the Syrian civil war is still going on. Syrian civil war still going on. So, and the of Ukraine war. So the general impression is US is losing out. The US control is reducing. So at this stage, when there is an impression that US is no more a major player, or rather US is it is shrinking abilities. So US want to reiterate and tell that no, we are still there. We are still serious about West Asia. We are still serious about all these regions. That is what they are trying to tell. And also, and another context is the increasing tension between US and Iran because of the nuclear issue. There is no solution right now, which US only precipitated it. US only withdrew from that agreement. Okay, but now somehow they want to come with a solution, or rather an agreement, which is not that easy. in the given circumstances. So, in all these context, in this context only the US is trying to engage in this region. That is why they are interested in this I2U2. Then, as far as India is concerned, why are we interested? What is India's interest? First of all, the West Asia is it's a triangle. For India, it's a triangular relationship. There are three major players. Of course, Saudi Arabia, and along with that UAE there. UAE and Saudi Arabia are on one side. Then second is Iran, and number three is Israel. And all the three are at loggerheads, we can say. Saudi and Iran cannot see eye to eye. Iran and Israel cannot see eye to eye. Okay, so they are always, so if we try to improve our relation with Saudi Arabia and UAE, automatically it may affect our relation with Iran. And if we try to improve our relation with Israel, it may affect the relationship on both other two. So it is always a very, very difficult relationship for India. So India has great interest in this region. That is because of our energy security, technological requirements, technology because of Israel. We are also interested because of our expats in India, expats in West Asia, or rather our Indians in West Asia, huge number Indians in West Asia. Then all these countries are Muslim countries, very influential in OIC, Organization of Islamic States, Islamic countries, OIC countries, and India has the second largest Muslim population in the world. We have almost 200 million. 200 million, second only to Indonesia. So, and our relationship with OIC countries are very crucial. Indians in West Asia is another issue, and a huge remittance, economically huge remittance from them. India is a country with the maximum remittance in the world. We are getting almost around $80 billion per year, which our Indians who are working abroad sending back to India. It is the highest in the world, and a major portion comes from this region. So India has great interest, and also Iran and West Asia, through which access to Central Asia. Through West Asia and Gulf. Okay, so we have economic interest, we have strategic interest, our people there. Okay, so India has great interest there. So right now, but one big challenge which we will be facing in this region is Iran. One challenge for I2U2 is Iran. See, Iran, please understand, Iran's history, when you look, till 1979, somebody is asking also why US has a bitter relationship with Iran. And see, Israel has a bitter relationship because US has a bitter relationship. Otherwise, Israel is a creation of US. Okay. So, till 1979 revolution, Iran was ruled by a Shah, like Shahenshah, like king, Maharaja in India. It is Shah in Iran. In Russia, what was that? Tsars. So, same thing, Shah Pahlavi. Okay, Pahlavi was the ruler from 1940 to 1979, and Pahlavi was a close friend of US. Okay, and Iran was an ally of US during the Cold War era. But suddenly in 1979, Islamic revolution took place, and it was a violent overthrow of this government, Pahlavi government, and unfortunately Pahlavi was also sick and he was suffering from cancer, and next year itself in US he died, okay, 1980 or late 79 I think he died. Okay, so Islamic Revolution by Ayatollah Khomeini. And immediately after the revolution, when these revolutionaries, especially the youth, the revolutionaries, they, and you know, Shah managed to escape to USA and he was given asylum there, and mainly he was given asylum for his treatment, and he was a friend of US also. But these revolutionaries felt that US and the Shah, they are conspiring to counter-attack. They are conspiring to throw these revolutionaries out. Fearing that, these revolutionaries attacked the US embassy in Tehran. And they captured all the embassy officials, 52 of them, 53 of them, they were captured and kept as hostages. This is one of the most dramatic hostage drama took place in the entire history, or maybe in the last 50 years we can say. Okay, and even US tried to, through a secret mission, they wanted to release them. That mission failed. The plane crashed. So many things happened. All commandos got killed, and Tehran and Iran became all the more mad by hearing about this failed mission. Finally, after 444 days, there was an agreement in Tunisia whereby they agreed to release all the hostages except one who died under the hostage, and he became that one hostage. He lost his mental balance because the torture Iranians have done. Otherwise, all hostages were released finally after 440 or 44 days. Tunisia agreement was there. Anyway, so now what happened since 1979? No diplomatic relations between Iran and US. No diplomatic relations. They have not normalized the relationship between Iran and US since 1979. Still it is going on the same way of that time. Okay. And meantime, in 2002, after 2002, US started accusing Iran of secret nuclear program, which Iran denied. US called Iran as part of axis of evil. Like, you are an evil. Iran said, how dare you call me evil? Okay. So evil definition may discussion and fight, and ultimately the US accused Iran of having a secret nuclear program, nuclear weapon program, where they had some program, no doubt regarding this. And finally in 2014, after so many years of negotiations, there was a P5+1 plus Iran, obviously, nuclear agreement. Okay, it was a long struggle, almost 10 years of fight. Finally, P5, permanent 5 of the UN plus Germany plus, so P5 means US, UK, France, Russia and China. Then +1 mein Germany. Of course, European Union also participated, but it was known as P5+1, plus of course Iran. All of them signed an agreement whereby both sides agreed on certain things, like Iran has committed that they will not go for any weapon program for the next so many years. So, curtail on various activities, everything was done. But in one fine morning, our Trump, he unilaterally this agreement, saying that this is not going to save the world from Iranian bombs. Okay. So, his argument, without any provocation no provocation from Iran, and Trump walked out, or US walked out. When US walked out, Iran said that if you are walking out from the agreement, I will start once again my weapon program. ओके, ईरान भी कम नहीं है ना, तो वो भी अपना टू प्रोवोकेट US, Iran also said that I will also start something. They also started enrichment of uranium. Enrichment of uranium is seen as a first step in going for weapon program. Okay, so Iran restarted the enrichment program. Now Joe Biden wants to have a final agreement with Iran, but they themselves, the US only walked out. Now, but the rest of the P5 and everybody said that US should not walk out, but ultimately it did not happen. So that negotiations are still going on. And the Israel's problem is, as we know very well, Israel was created in 1948. It was created in the Palestinian land. Suddenly a country was created, or it was thrusted upon this region called Palestine. And these Palestinians are Arabs. They are predominantly Muslims. They feel that their complaint is a new country has been forced on their head without their consent. A new country has been created. Suppose we are living peacefully in Hyderpur, and suddenly if you say it's a new country, another country comes and somebody else start, and say that this is a new country, and outsiders are coming and start staying there. So this is a fight which started in Israel in 1948, even though UN only created it. So the rest of the Arabs fought against Israel. Arab-Israel wars took place. There are 4 wars took place during this time. In the third Arab-Israel war of 1967, Israel captured even whatever little Palestinians had. They captured West Bank, they captured Gaza Strip, they captured East Jerusalem, all territories which were given to the Palestinians as part of the 1948 UN resolution. This was also captured by captured by Israel. Okay, so that is why there is an Israel-Palestinian fight going on. Things were going on. Finally, in 1993, very short summary I am telling. In 1993, the first accord between Israel and Palestinians were signed, called Oslo Accord, where Israel agreed to recognize Palestine and give back the land. Okay, of course they did not give. And based on this Oslo Accord in 1994, Israel was recognized by Jordan. Jordan was the first, in fact the second country. In 1979, another country recognized Israel, that was Egypt, much before all these things. So Egypt is the first Arab country to recognize Israel. Jordan became the second Arab country to recognize Israel. Then in 2020, UAE became the third through this Abraham Accord, and then Bahrain became the fourth. And subsequently, Morocco and Sudan, they also recognized, so they became 5 and 6. So 6 Arab countries have recognized Israel, not more than that. Okay, there are so many Arab countries there, only 6 have recognized Israel officially. And this is why there is a bitterness between Arabs and Israel. US and Iran is a separate issue. So there are multiple problems here. And now through these I2U2, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to, or rather the global community, especially Arabs and Israel, they are trying to reconcile. Okay, the reconciliation between the groups which is going on. So it is not that easy. There are too many historic issues, too much of fight. So it may not be that easy to resolve and move forward, but a good step, a good beginning, we can say. Another problem which I2U2 will face is less strategic clarity regarding what we want to achieve. There is less strategic clarity regarding what is to be achieved through I2U2. What is to be achieved. But definitely for India, it is a major step because we are trying to reconcile, because we want to have, so we are always finding it difficult to balance the relationship between the three: Saudi, Iran and Israel. So now, if Saudi's friend only UAE, if UAE and Israel, if you are able to reconcile, now we have to deal only with Iran now. So of course, it is a big balancing act will be required, but uh, there can be some movement. So for India, it is a major diplomatic breakthrough, we can say. Of the three ends, at least two of them, we can handle it together now. But overall, we can say it is a good beginning to resolve the West Asian crisis. But there is another problem in this region, that is the sectoral, sectarian, not sectoral, sectarian divide, the Shia versus Sunni divide is a challenge. Then Chinese presence, I mean China has big economic trade and technology contact with uh, Israel also, with UAE also. China has deep economic interest in Israel and UAE. So China will definitely be acting as the other pole here also. India and US may be quite convinced that China is going to be a strategic competitor, but for Israel and UAE, China need not be. They also have some, they will have definitely have some interest in China. So this can be a counter magnet for this closer relationship for I2U2 countries. Okay. So that is the situation as far as I2U2. Long way to go. Beginning just started. Then about a couple of words about Abraham Accords. Okay. So for it was signed in 2020 uh, between, or it started with UAE, with Israel, then Bahrain and USA. In September 2020, in White House, they signed an agreement for better cooperation, and that is how this Abraham Accords began. Okay, that was in September 2020. Subsequently, then the Israel UAE Accord, as well as Israel Bahrain Accord are also termed as part of this, or mutual recognition is also part of this Abraham Accords only. It has been named after that. So definitely this is a major or a new beginning, we can say. Abraham Accords can be seen as a new beginning in West Asia politics. It can be seen as a new beginning in the West Asia politics. It will improve the people-to-people contact. Even a direct flight between Israel and Saudi Arabia, they are planning, I think now. Okay, they are talking about that. Okay, it will improve people-to-people contact. And this can also, this is also an indication that Arab countries are trying to decouple their relations with Israel from the Palestine issue. That means they are delinking their relations with Israel from earlier. Their stand was that they will have diplomatic relations with Israel only if Israel resolve the Palestine problem, but they are slowly decoupling that. That can be a problem for Palestinians. Naturally, they will not get that much weightage. So, but ultimately, an improved relations between Israel and Arab countries may lead to a two-state solution to the Palestine problem. Okay, it may lead to the two-state solution to the Palestine. What do you mean by two-state solution? See, in Mediterranean region, you can see east of Mediterranean. Okay, this eastern side of Mediterranean is also known as Levant. This was asked this year. अगले साल तो नहीं पूछेगा. Okay, so rising sun. Okay, that is the eastern Mediterranean Sea is also known as Levant or the land of rising sun here. And this region, a new country was created in 1940. This yellow color is the Israel, which was created by UN. So when they created Israel in 1948, already the locals who are living there, the Arab population who are living here, because Egypt is an Arab country, Jordan is an Arab country, Syria is another Arab country, all are Arab countries here, Arabs were living here. Those locals were given some land or other some land was earmarked for them, and those places were, one is this Gaza Strip. You can see a small strip here in the sea coast, which where Arabs were thickly populated, so that land was left alone for Arabs. Similarly, what you call the West Bank, Jordan River, so this region, this is called the West Bank. I hope you can see that. This land, and there is a river flowing here. So there is a small lake here. Okay, there is a small lake. This is the lake I am talking about. I hope you can see that. This lake is on a Sea of Galilee. Sea of Galilee, and from Sea of Galilee there is a freshwater river, and this river is known as River Jordan. All linked to Bible and all. So this is flowing, that is the boundary between Israel and Jordan, and finally it is draining into Dead Sea. This is Dead Sea. So here all lakes are sea. That is because ancient time they could not make out the difference between sea and lake. So that is why they call it as sea, otherwise it is only a small lake. Even Sea of Galilee is a small lake. So this is River Jordan. And the western bank of this River Jordan is known as West Bank. And here also, because of the availability of fresh water, thickly populated region or thickly populated by the Arabs. So these two regions, Gaza Strip and West Bank, were left behind for Arabs to live there. So these two places also were captured by Israel in 1967 war. Now, since then, the Palestinians are fighting for, earlier they were fighting against Israel for the whole land. After 67, they changed the strategy and they said at least they want this Gaza Strip and West Bank. So they were fighting. That is how Palestine Liberation Organization and all they were fighting. But no solution till now. In I think 2010, 2011, when President Obama was there, he declared that America's aim will be to have a two-state solution to the problem. Two-state solution to the problem. So, according to him, the two-state solution means there will be Israel and there will be another country called Palestine, comprising of West Bank and Gaza Strip, and also a small portion of Jerusalem also. You can see Jerusalem city here. That Jerusalem cities, half will be given to Arabs and half will be given to Israelis, because it is holy for both the communities. So, these two states which are being talked about by the US at that time are, one is Israel and the other is Palestine. Palestine will be made as an independent country, and that Palestine will comprise of West Bank, then Gaza and portions of East Jerusalem. So, that is a broad agreement which, or the broad plan which was given by President Obama in 2011, and that is how this name two-state solution has come up. Okay. So, with this I2U2 and all we are trying to tell you is the chances of reconciliation is high, and this may lead to, that is why I am using the term, this may lead to a two-state solution to the Palestinian problem in this region. So, it is a long-standing problem, a huge injustice to Palestinians. Their land was occupied forcefully by Israel, of course, in the name of a UN resolution of 1948. Initially, they took 2/3 of Palestinian land, created Israel. Now, in 1967, they captured the remaining 1/3 also, and now Palestinians are having no land, or rather they are occupied by Israel and they are living at the mercy of Israel right now. So, that is why the problem is happening. Okay. So, this Abrahamic Accords and all will definitely help in solving the problem in the long run. Okay. That is what we are hoping. So, that is about it.